Bakit ba nagiging napakagastos ng eleksyon? Ano ba yung pinagkakagastusan ng mga kandidato, mga kumakandidato?
Well, unang-una kasi, magtatanong ka bakit binoboto ng tao yung isang candidate.
Mhm.
So most of them would answer na because kilala nila yung isang candidate. So main consideration actually ng candidates yung exposure na tinatawag. And for you na magkaroon ng exposure, it's either you go around day-to-day campaigning or yung iba ginagawa nila, nagkakaroon sila ng advertisement, hindi lang sa radio but sa TV ad.
Mm.
So, lahat nito may equivalent na gastos yan. For example, if you go around the country, then kailangan mong umikot, magbayad ng transportation, magdala ng tao. And apart from that, kailangan mo rin magdala ng campaign posters. At tawag ito, campaign posters all over the country. So,
Mhm.
may expense ka sa printing. And of course, yung pinakamahal sa lahat is yung tinatawag na advertisements. So,
Mm.
TV at saka radio. To give you an example, TV advertisement, a 30-second advertisement would cost around 1.2 million.
1.2 million na
Yes,
kaagad.
1.2 million na agad.
Mm.
So kung titingnan ninyo, pag pinagsama-sama mo to, it will actually balloon into a very huge amount. So, ang gastos, dito lahat napupunta yan. And of course, pinag-uusapan natin dito, yung legal na gastos.
Mm-mm.
And there are, for example, ang reality naman dito is maraming candidate actually would do vote buying, which is still outside of yung legal na gastos na tinatawag. So,
So-
ganun kalaki yung ginagastos.
Yung mga dinideclare or sinasubmit na SOSE sa COMELEC ay hindi katotohanan.
Well, ako siguro, I mean, I came from COMELEC, so I have experience as a regulator naman.
Yes.
Unlike now, sa kabilang bakod
May
na
mga
ako.
kliyente.
Oo. But kung titingnan ninyo kasi, diniscuss ko to sa last article ko,
Mm-mm.
na yung reality naman dyan is actually walang audit mechanism yung COMELEC to check, to counter-check kung tama ba yung declaration sa may SOSE. Because sa totoo lang, if you come to think of it, pag talagang inaudit ng COMELEC yung lahat ng SOSE, i-counter-check niya lahat ng na-issue'ng resibo sa BIR. If pag mag-cross-agency checking sila, maraming bubukol dyan.
Mhm.
Di ba? So, ang nangyayari kasi, since hindi na-audit, a lot of candidates are very comfortable na, okay, sige, kahit hindi ko i-declare yan, nonetheless, hindi din naman ako mauhuli.
Mm.
Kasi usually, ang reality naman dyan, there are around, I think, 80 to 100,000 sources being filed every after election. Ganun kadami yan. And
Dami.
COMELEC as a very tiny department in charge dyan.
Ilan ang tao?
Hindi ko alam kung gaano kadami, but actually, hindi pa mga permanent positions yan. They would just get lawyers from one department and then they would hire contractuals and casuals.
Mm-mm.
So kung titingnan ninyo, wala talagang way yung COMELEC to counter-check all of these sources, to counter-check one by one. Kasi ang priority ng COMELEC dyan, titingnan niya lang, among those who filed, sino yung nag-exceed?
Mm.
So naka-red flag ka kaagad. Kung sino yung hindi nag-file, naka-red flag ka din.
Mhm.
But all those actually
The details.
na below doon sa limit, and then nag-file ka naman, parang under the radar ka, usually hindi na naka-counter-check yan.
Okay.
In the 2013 senatorial elections, Nancy Binay received nearly 137 million pesos in campaign donations, but she spent only 129 million. The difference of 8 million, that's income, according to the Bureau of Internal Revenue. Nancy placed fifth, by the way, getting more than 13 million votes. It wasn't exactly the same story for retired military officer Ramon Montaño. He placed 30 out of 33 senatorial candidates, getting just 800,000 votes. He may have lost in that political exercise, but he went home 5 million pesos richer. These are the top two senatorial candidates who reported the biggest savings according to their statements of election contributions and expenditures back in 2013. Other candidates also walked away with more money than they initially had after the elections. The savings, if not returned to donors, should be declared and subject to income tax. According to BIR revenue regulations, these excess campaign funds should be included in the candidate's income tax return. It's no secret how much money circulates during election season. While some candidates draw from their own pockets, many also rely on the help of some rich, well-connected friends.
Sometimes they say that it's an investment.
And there was even an advocate who likens donation to a candidate to candidates as a venture capitalism, which should not be so.
COMELEC Commissioner Louis Guia says while support and generosity are very much appreciated during election season, these should not come from certain individuals who pose conflicts of interests. On the list, civil servants, members of the armed forces, financial institutions, holders of state franchises like telcos, mining, or media companies, corporations, foreign entities, and anybody or any group with a government contract. As in many things, the trouble is always in the execution, as certain groups try to skirt the rules.
Basically, one is you want the candidate to be transparent. Okay? Second also, aside from being transparent, campaign finance is about good governance, no? Kasi if a candidate hindi pa siya nanalo and he's breaking all the election laws, what do you expect him when he gets into the position? And third is parang it's not about money. Politics should not be about money, it's public service. So, parang kung ngayon ang trending is lahat na mga may pera, yun lang ang kaya magkandidato, ay hindi naman maganda sa bansa natin yan. Nakipansin ko lang, parang itong area na parang hindi interesado masyado yung previous COMELEC. They're more focused on yung mga terrorism, yung mga ganun. But ngayon, kung tingnan mo yung trending ng politika natin, naging papuntang pera eh. So kaya kailangan bigyan ng atensyon yung issue ng pera sa eleksyon.
Hindi ho ba sabi nila pagka...
Magalit man kayo, hindi. Ang sa amin, malinis yung konsensya namin. We're just doing what we're paid to do, no? To really enforce the law. No?
Political parties seek financial contributions from their supporters to help cover campaign costs. The Omnibus Election Code, however, states not all campaign contributions are allowed by law. These include funds coming from public or private financial institutions, those involved in operating a public utility, and persons contracted to supply goods and services to the government. Contributions are also not allowed from those granted franchises or similar concessions by the government, nor those granted with loans or accommodations from the government in excess of 100,000 pesos. Also banned from giving contributions are educational institutions with grants of public funds amounting to no less than 100,000 pesos, as well as officials or employees in the civil service, members of the Armed Forces of the Philippines, and foreigners and foreign corporations. The law considers campaign contributions from foreign governments as interference in national affairs. Soliciting or receiving funds from prohibited sources is an election offense, and those found guilty may be disqualified from running in the polls.
Magandang gabi! Magandang gabi sa ating lahat at magandang gabi sa mga avid viewers ng hashtag sa atin ang election podcast in Facebook and YouTube, lalong-lalo na sa ating mga guests tonight, partners and chapters. I am Briza Rosales, podcasting live here in Tagaytay.
Good evening, Lente! Good evening, youngsters, sa lahat ng mga millennials, Gen Z, at sa lahat ng mga kaibigan at barkadang nanonood ngayon. So I am Joshua Miguel Lopez, podcasting live with Briza dito sa Tagaytay.
Hi Josh, magandang gabi. At salamat na pag-unlakan mo yung aming imbitasyon na maging co-host and partner ngayong gabi habang nagpa-planning ang youth-led team sa labas. Pero welcome sa hashtag sa atin ang election podcast, Josh. So yung explain ko lang bakit hashtag sa atin. So we want the safe, accountable, transparent, inclusive elections which inspires national public confidence.
Ayan, so maraming salamat din, Briza, sa pag-invite sa akin dito, no? Pero baka nagtataka kayo or curious kayo kung bakit kayo magkasama ngayong gabi. So actually, andun lang siya. Nasa isang kwarto lang kami. Ang Lente po kasi ngayon ay nasa work bubble. So for 2 weeks, our goal really is to get to know more of each other and to get to know Lente as an organization and
of course, to have fun. So, syempre, yung dala-dala ng COVID-19 pandemic. So, honestly, ngayon lang po, isang linggo pa lang kami magkakilala ni Josh. Isang linggo pa lang kami nagkikita dito sa aming PBB Work Bubble House. And sinashare namin sa inyo to because you matter to us. Kasi walang mabubuo na podcast, walang mabubuo na mga avid viewers ng hashtag sa atin ng election podcast kung hindi nagkaroon ng kung hindi lahat na quarantine. So at least kahit papano, ito yung good side ng pandemic sa organization. At least.
Ayan, so sabi mo nga, Briza, no, they matter to us. Kaya for tonight's episode and for everyone's information, Lente currently prepares its election army and foot soldiers for the upcoming 2022 national and local elections. So matindi-tindi talagang paghahanda at pagpapatuloy ng usaping eleksyon at pampolitika, lalo na ngayong 2022 na papasok na yung presidential elections.
That's why in our special podcast episode, pag-uusapan natin ngayong gabi ang pera at eleksyon. Kaya sa mga kanina pa curious sa title ng episode natin ngayong gabi, halina at pag-usapan natin ang
Funds! Ganern! Pera at politika! Ayan, so di tayo nagsasabay.
Josh, gusto mo ba
One more, sige.
Sige. 1, 2, 3, go.
Funds! Ganern! Pera at eleksyon!
Ayan, okay na yun, Josh. So Josh, bago tayo magsimula, gusto ko lang tanungin na Josh, game ka na ba?
Game na game!
So kaya Josh, sa ating mga avid viewers, no? Ayan, yes.
Ay, pa baka
music natin. So yeah, so para sa ngayon sa ating mga avid viewers, no? So welcome po ulit sa hashtag sa atin ng election podcast episode 12, Funds, Ganern, Pera at Eleksyon. So Josh, ituloy-tuloy ko na ha. So this podcast po kasi will run until 2022 in parallel sa preparation po for the national, local, and hopefully BARM parliamentary elections. So kaya po sa podcast na to, we want to reach out to more stakeholders and to promote awareness in election laws, election issues, and procedures. But for tonight's episode, we want to talk about the scope, nature, and impact of funds being spent on the election campaigns, to have a deeper understanding as to the issues, challenges, and innovations, especially pagdating po ng election campaign season, and to talk about the laws and policies in relation to campaign finance. So yan yung mga objectives ng pag-uusapan natin ngayong gabi.
Okay, so actually, Briza, ang dami niyang pumapasok sa isip ko ngayon, no? So I'm really curious, especially dahil related din to sa program na hinahandle namin sa Lente, which is yung Tayo Na Collaboratory, no? So I have some curious questions, like tulad ng saan nakukuha ng kandidato ang pera niya sa pangangampanya, paano ginagastos ng kandidato ang pera nila sa pangangampanya, At bakit gano'n na lang yung interest ng mga kandidato sa pagtakbo? As in, tumataya, nagbubuhos talaga ng pera sa gastos every time na nagkakaroon ng elections.
Sa true, Josh, no, actually, yung honest or curious question ko rin, should elections really be this expensive? Or why should we be bothered sa campaign finance? So, gaano kahalaga na pag-usapan itong pera at politika, pera at eleksyon para magkaroon tayo ng credible and genuine elections?
Okay, so wag na natin patagalin, Briza, no? Pakilala na natin ang mga guests natin tonight. So for our first speaker, no, or for our first guest, she's currently working as an attorney for the Campaign Finance Office, handling cases relating to campaign finance violation of candidates and participating in political finance policy studies, including the regulation of corporate contributions, ban on public works and release of public funds, and regulation of social media campaigns. She also worked as a staff at the Office of Commissioner Al A. Pareño from 2018 to 2020, and she's also a member of the Technical Working Group of the Persons with Disability and Senior Citizen Committee for the 2019 national and local elections that prepared the resolution on emergency accessible polling precinct voting. So let's all welcome po Attorney Mary Vin Duwag.
Thank you, Josh. Pakilala ko naman ang second guest natin for tonight's episode. So after a 1-year practice in a full-service law firm, she transferred to the government sector and performed election-related work from May 2013 to March 2020 as a legal and technical staff at the Office of Commissioner Louis Tito Guia at the Commission on Elections. So in the course of said employment, she handled and participated in several projects which sought to create policy, improve systems and processes, and ensure improved results within the institution, such as the adoption of the Strategic Performance Management System, expansion of the Indigenous Peoples Registration and Voting, and post-election audits. Currently, so she is the Policy Reform Consultant of Lente on its political party and election campaign finance reform. So for our second guest, we have Attorney Isa Katrina Reyes. So Josh, tawagin ko ulit sila. No? Ang mga guests natin for tonight's episode, we have Attorney Vin Duwag and Attorney Isa Katrina Reyes.
Okay po, maraming salamat po sa pagpasok, Attorney Vin at Attorney Isa. At para naman sa lahat ng mga nanonood niyo sa Facebook at sa YouTube, do not forget to share our episode and use hashtag sa atin ang eleksyon. So again, that's hashtag sa atin ang eleksyon.
Josh, may ganito daw yun eh. Hashtag sa atin ang eleksyon.
Hashtag.
Hashtag.
Hashtag sa atin. Hashtag sa atin ang eleksyon. So kung meron kayong mga katanungan mamaya na gusto niyo masagot ng ating mga guests, pakitype na lang yun sa comment section. Kaya huwag niyong kalimutan yung hashtag sa atin ang eleksyon.
Thank you, Josh. So hopefully sana marami ang magtanong ng mga makabuluhang mga questions para kay Attorney Isa and Attorney V. Pero bago tayo magsimula, kumustahin naman muna natin si Attorney Isa and Attorney V. Attorney Isa, kumusta po kayo? Attorney V.
Okay naman.
Hello, Brisa.
Yung questions, directed kay Attorney Vin.
Yung questions daw po ibabato na sa inyo, Attorney Vin.
Maraming salamat sa pag-invite. Sige, babay na pala. Joke lang.
Attorney Vin, wag niyo po muna kami iiwan. Mga na lang, 40 minutes.
Opo, saka medyo showbiz po yung team natin ngayon.
Maraming salamat sa Lente for this opportunity.
Maraming salamat po, Attorney Vin. Attorney Isa? Meron po kayong mga
may gusto po ba kayong
may gusto
batiin?
po ba kayo sabihin?
Baka may pa-shoutout po kayo ng Attorney Vin.
Ang millennial din. Wala, sorry. Happy Friday night to everyone.
Opo, happy Friday night. So Josh, simulan naman natin to.
Sige, ako na magsisimula ng first question, no? So, kasi kanina pinapanood ko yung videos natin right before we had this podcast stream, no? Tapos na-mention kanina yung tungkol sa campaign finance, which is yung team naman natin ngayon. So curious lang po ako, Attorney Vin, siguro for the first question. So, paano po ba nadidiktahan nung limitations on campaign finance yung paraan ng pagkakampanya ng mga politiko?
Actually, Josh, that is a good question, no? Pero para masagot ko siya, pinakamaganda siguro muna nating i-establish. Paano ba nalilimitahan ng campaign finance in general, hindi lang yung dikta nung kung paano ginagawa ng ating mga kandidato yung kanilang pangangampanya, kundi kung paano ba naaapektuhan ito yung buong election system natin. According to our constitution, there is a guarantee of equal opportunities for public service. Ano ibig sabihin? Ibig sabihin hindi lang yung may mga mayayaman ang pwedeng pumasok, hindi lang yung mga mahihirap ang pwedeng pumasok. So ibig sabihin there is an imperative for the government na to provide a standard level kung sino-sino yung mga pwedeng pumapasok. So there is a hindi lang siya sa merit na aspirant, hindi lang sa appointive position, pati sa elective position. So in general, what campaign finance tries to achieve is to democratize the public service, to allow the entry of elected officials not based on the economic standing of the person. So ganun yung epekto ng pagkakaroon ng campaign finance. So if you ask me dun sa ating tanong, more specifically, how does it change or how does the limitation dictate the way the politicians do their campaign? Nandun tayo sa due to the limitation ng kanilang campaign spending, they are forced to be more innovative kung saan nila dadalhin, saan nila i-allocate yung allowed lang na expenditures nila. So again, what campaign finance tries to achieve is to tend to correct then the inequality and to give fairness para sa lahat. So I think yun yung pinaka more na na-achieve niya. And on the part of the candidates naman, it's their allocation kung saan dadalhin yung paano nila mama-maximize within their limited expenditure yung kanilang campaign finance, yung kanilang campaign funds.
Thank you, Attorney Vin. So yung campaign finance regulations nga po, no, we want to level the playing field, no, to level the playing field para sa ating mga kandidato. So Josh, ako naman magtatanong kay Attorney Aiza. Sa Attorney Aiza, naniniwala ka ba sa forever?
Bakit ganun?
Bakit ganun yung tanong ko? Pero Attorney Aiza, ano lang po, para sa lahat, no, wala po bang hanggan ang paggastos sa mga kandidato? Or wala po bang limit, di ba? Parang kung ako po, marami akong pera, pwede akong gumastos ng gumastos. So meron po bang limit ng paggastos sa ating mga kandidato? So magkaiba din po ba kapag national candidate and local candidate?
Okay, so for that question, we have Section 13 of Republic Act number 7166, which provides for an expenditure limit for candidates. Tama yung question, depending yan sa position na tinatakbuhan ng kandidato. So for President and Vice President, it's 10 pesos per registered voter. And then other candidates with a political party, that would be 3 pesos per registered voter. So for example, yung senators natin, that would be 3 pesos times the number of registered voters for an election. And then other candidates naman without a political party, since wala silang help from their parties, unlike yung mga may partido na ating mga kandidato, they're allowed 5 pesos for every registered voter. So just to put this into context, so for president, example, in the 2016 national and local elections, we have a total of 54,363,844 registered voters. Times 10 pesos, that would be 543,638,440 pesos. Parang maliit lang, parang ang laki, no? Pero the candidates are saying that this amount is not enough for a national campaign. So may current move to increase yung campaign expenditure limit natin. But we have to watch out for this since according nga dun sa sinabi ni Attorney Vin, we have to make sure na equal pa rin yung playing field for other candidates without much financial support.
Thank you, Attorney Aiza. Bigla lang po akong na-curious. Di pa po ba yung amount was set 30 years ago? Tama po ba? Or agree din po ba kayo sa nasabi niyo, Attorney Aiza, na dapat i-increase na nga yung limit depende sa candidate? So, ano pong tingin niyo, Attorney Aiza, doon sa pending bill natin ngayon sa
So
Congress?
yung RA 71 RA 7166 is 1990s law. So yeah, medyo 30 years na din. There's logic to increase yung amount natin, to make yung campaign natin mas para maabot yung isang principle naman in campaign finance is we have to make sure then that our candidates are able to disseminate or to let the voters know kung ano yung plataforma nila just in case they get elected into office. So in that sense, pwede na siya i-increase. But yung current bill kasi na naka-file ngayon, like for example, they want 50 pesos per registered voter for presidential and vice presidential candidates. So sa isang election, should this get approved, it would amount to 3 billion 92 million pesos of campaign funds for one position. So I think yung ganyang kataas na expenditure limit for one candidate, are we ready for it? Tingin ko not that much pa, diba? So we have to temper din the amount should we want to increase the expenditure.
Thank you po doon sa clarification, Attorney Aiza. And doon sa computation. Gusto ko muna kaya mo ba yung Josh? Josh, 3 billion.
Oo nga,
Hindi ko na lang natandaan ko na lang yung 3 billion.
Oo nga, pero parang nahihirapan din ako mag-compute kanina. Parang tumatakla sa akin yung 3 billion. Pero I mean, kasi ngayon ko lang din na-encounter yung topic about campaign finance. And I think that's also the experience of many of the Filipinos na when pag-usapang finance, nahihirapan i-absorb. But I think one of the main questions is, ano nga ba yung mangyayari kapag lumagpas? So gusto ko po sana ibatuhin yung tanong na yun kay Attorney Vin. So if ever man na lumagpas tayo doon sa kung 3 billion man siya or yung ibang numbers, sorry, hindi ko na siya nasasalaw. Kung anong numbers po, after we exceed that limit, meron po bang mga penalties yun? Meron bang regulatory measures doon?
To answer your question, Josh, yes. Okay, pero bago ko sagutin yan, i-lay down ko muna yung legal basis natin for the SOSE submission. The law requires under Section 107 of the Omnibus Election Code and Section 14 of RA 7166 for the submission of the SOSE. And of course, may limit kung hanggang saan lang yung pwedeng gastusin ng isang kandidato. Kasi again, we are trying to level the playing field. So, ngayon, the question is, what if mag-fail silang magpasa? Anong mangyayari? So, Section 13 of RA 7166 provides that if an elected candidate fails na i-submit yung kanyang SOSE, he cannot assume office until he submit his SOSE. So, what if naman, hindi ka naman elected candidate? What will happen? So, if there's a failure to submit the first time, then there will be a fine. That will constitute a fine. Ngayon, paano yan? Lagi na lang nilang hindi kasi may fine lang naman. No, hindi. Subsequent or repeated offender shall be liable for a fine and shall be perpetually disqualified to hold public office. So, hindi dapat sinasawalang bahala ng mga kandidato natin yung pagpa-file ng ating SOSE. Kasi, hindi sila makakapag-assume kung elected sila at yung kanilang failure will merit a fine or kapag paulit-ulit yung failure, it will merit a perpetual disqualification to hold public office. So, yun yung mga consequences kung hindi sila magpa-file ng kanilang SOSE.
Yun po. Actually, meron akong follow-up question po, Attorney Vin, no? Kasi parang naaalala ko sa mga previous discussions ko din with some of my friends while doing work, no? Na parang yung principle ay kapag inelect siya ng taong bayan, parang dapat makaupo siya sa eleksyon. So, ano po yung paano ba na pupush or paano ba na-i-implement ng COMELEC yung ganung regulation na on one hand, sabihin natin na-elect yung isang leader. On another hand, parang may record na siya at dapat barred na talaga siya from public office.
Actually, kapag yung sinasabi nating barred from public office, are you referring to the repeated offenders, yung mga may mga multiple offenders na sila? If you are referring to that, meron naman tayong mga cases for disqualification. So, may proseso din yan para ma-disqualify sila. So, syempre, until tapos yung proseso, then hindi na sila makakatakbo. So the COMELEC naman is very vigilant in monitoring kung disqualified na yung candidates natin.
Opo. Thank you po doon, Attorney Vin. Attorney Vin, may isang tanong lang po ako. Parang related po doon sa unang question natin. Meron na po bang na penalized pagdating po doon sa halimbawa nag-violate siya doon sa expense limit? So meron na po ba tayong case na gano'n?
Marami tayong, kung yung tinatanong is kung yung mga nag-overspend, tama ba?
Yes po, opo.
Oo. Yung mga nag-overspend kasi, if I may clarify, meron din, iba naman din ang set ng sa kanila iba naman din ang set ng punishment. So under the Omnibus Election Code, overspending is an election offense. So kapag convicted, the offender shall be imprisoned of not less than 1 year but not more than 6 years without the benefit of probation. So isa siyang election offense. Right now, marami tayong mga kaso na nakapending sa mga RTC kung saan sila ay saan nililitis yung mga nagkaroon ng overspending cases.
Thank you po, Attorney Vin. So talagang merong limit sa paggasto. So sa tulad nga ng sabi ni Attorney Vin, madami na ring pending cases at the same time. Meron na rin talagang napatunayan na nag-violate dun sa election offense na overspending. So yun, just to relate niya po.
Other than that, siguro ito medyo mas narinig nyo to sa medyo famous ito sa news na nagkaroon ng isang disqualification for overspending. If you will recall, in 2013, around 2013 ata, I think former Laguna Governor E.R. Ejercito was disqualified by COMELEC for overspending. So nandun yung meron naman tayong monitoring and sa part ng COMELEC and at the same time, meron din naman dun sa part ng mga korte natin.
Okay. Thank you po, Attorney Vin. So ito naman pong question na to para naman po kay Attorney Aiza ulit. Favorite ko pong tanongin si Attorney Aiza. Pero Attorney Aiza, dun sa emergence po ng social media, or even calling yung 2016 elections po natin as a social media election. So yung tanong po ay, how does digital campaigning affect the election campaign finance?
Okay, so with digital campaigning or yung social media campaigning, the way I see it is that it's another medium for COMELEC to regulate. Kasi diba, like Attorney Vin mentioned, there is a notable case in 2013 of disqualification. Yung finding in that case is because of yung COMELEC was able to improve on verifying campaign expenditures utilizing information provided by television company naman yun. So, dahil may nakitang data given by a television company or a television network, nagkaroon ng judgment or ruling of disqualification. Social media campaign, since it's a new medium, an emerging medium, parang a similar policy siguro of verifying information from social media companies Pero there are two possible issues on this. Like number one, because social media is very convenient, diba? We see na it's very easy to create accounts without mechanisms to verify identity of people. So dahil dyan sa issue na yan, nagkaroon tayo ng prevalence of fake social media accounts and troll armies. So bakit siya importante in campaign finance monitoring? Troll armies are, di ba, binabayaran sila, right? So, sa campaign finance kasi important na makita kung saan dumadaloy yung pera. So, kung hindi natin ma-verify yung identity ng mga tao na dinadaluyan ng pera, then it's a problem. And then secondly, of course, yung cooperation ng social media companies to regulatory authorities. I'm not sure if our viewers are familiar, pero yung most or if not all, social media companies are not based in the Philippines. So they're doing business in a platform, so medyo abstract, pero yung doing of business nila is not in the Philippines. So etong argument na to is parang baka hindi sila dito nagdudo ng business. Of course, the regulatory agencies can say na don't do business here anymore. Pero are we at that level na? I don't think so kasi social media companies are still doing more good naman in terms of connecting people and making people express themselves better. So yun, may issues pero we have to find solutions for verifying of campaign expenditures.
If I can just add on that, na-mention ni Attorney Aiza yung tungkol sa pagkakaroon ng cooperation with with the social media companies. So, kung mapapansin nyo, Facebook launched this mechanism called the Facebook Ad Library, where you can actually track, it's actually traceable na kung ilan yung ginastos ng kandidato or nung Facebook page dun para sa kanilang ads. As far as verifying yung ating mga verifying or identifying the funds, alam mo, we rely mainly on the voluntary information from the candidates kasi nga ganun yung SOSE, pina-file nila sa atin and through their submission. Pero is there really another way to do that? Actually, isa sa mga pinaka-effective na way to monitor our candidates is through public participation. If the public could help us, could report to us, the CFO has the power to conduct preliminary inquiry based on the information that is forwarded by the public to us. So, siguro magandang chance ito para sa mga listener natin na ma-encourage natin sila na pwede silang mag-report actually. They can actually tell us kung may nakikita silang mga irregularities.
Okay. Thank you po, Attorney Bean, Attorney Aiza. Alam mo, Josh, share ko lang. Kasi one time, nag-test kami, yung isang mobile number in registering sa Facebook. So, alam mo ba, isang mobile number, nakaka-register siya ng 5 accounts. So, kasi meron pa tayo isang reform sa lente na ginagawa. So, tulad na nasabi ni Attorney Aiza, ang hirap-hirap ma-verify ng identity ng isang tao sa Facebook. So, lalo na yung mga trolls. So, isa yun sa mga problema talaga. Kaya yung reform na ginagawa natin, part yun, yung social media verification and accountability. And na-realize ko, na parang, ang hirap nga i-regulate ng digital campaigning. But, at least meron na yung Facebook Ads Library. Attorney Vin, kailan po ba na-launch yung Facebook Ads Library?
As far as I can remember, nung ako ay nag-meet pa with Facebook when I was working under the Office of Commissioner Al.A. Pareño, nauna siya i-roll out sa US. So I think very recent lang din nila nilabas, recent years lang. So bagong innovation to which will be very useful para sa darating na 2022 election kasi very verifiable na kung ilan yung nagastos nila.
Actually,
I'm
pwede po bang
not
mag-follow up tayo? Sorry.
After 2016 pa eh. Again, Josh, sorry.
Magpo-follow up question sana ako kasi na-curious din ako kanina, and kanina kasi may videos, 'di ba, before this podcast. At na-mention nila doon na parang umabot ng 100,000 or more siguro yung mga fina-file na SOSE after the election. So it's really difficult then for COMELEC to look at all the sources, no, kung meron bang nag-overspend or meron bang may shading nangyayari, no. So curious po ako, parang ano yung pwedeng gawin if say I'm a concerned citizen or say I'm part of the media from Sorsogon, which I'm from. Ano yung pwede namin gawin para i-notify si COMELEC na may nangyayari ditong hindi maganda?
Okay. Actually, Josh, kasi may dedicated office naman ng COMELEC, which is the for the monitoring of campaign finance, which is the campaign finance office. So if there are irregularities na napapansin and may report sa amin, you could inform us maybe through a letter or maybe even an email, kasi available naman sa COMELEC website ang aming official email address. So, makakabuti rin siguro kung meron kayong mga information na i-put out, na mag-attach na kayo ng mga ebidensya na maaaring gamitin ng campaign finance office in investigating. So, ayun, maganda ma-utilize natin yung ganong avenue, kasi may power naman may power ang campaign finance office. Lagi sinasabi, mahirap on our part, but actually may power ang campaign finance office to conduct a preliminary investigation. And sa tulong ng public, mas mai-empower palalo ang COMELEC na monitor ng mga campaign finance expenditures. So, I suggest maybe open naman ang aming lines, open naman ang aming directory, open naman ang aming email address. You could send your information to that.
Ayun, maraming salamat po doon, Attorney Vin. Pero while we're discussing po, no, naisip ko lang na kung kunyari ako ay isang taga Sorsogon, which I'm from nga. Tapos hindi pa ako familiar sa mga ganitong processes, no. Usually yung takbo ng tao ay takot siyang mag-report kasi baka balikan siya. So are there ways po na para mag-report anonymously?
As you know naman, 'di ba, syempre pag nagre-report tayo, kaya sinabi ko rin kanina, mas maganda kung may mailalakip na ng mga ebidensya, kasi hindi rin naman kami required talaga to divulge sino ba itong mga nag-aakusa na ito. So I mean, as long as you provide us with the complaint, with the information, and then we see that the information merits, may basihan yung information naman, so we can still conduct naman the preliminary investigation, especially lalo na kung sasabihin ng ating complainant na meron siya mga fears, may mga we can accommodate that naman.
Maraming salamat po, Attorney Vin, no, for that very reassuring na information. Riza?
Yes, Josh, kasi umiinit na yung ating usapan ngayong gabi. I-invite ko lang ulit ang ating avid viewers sa Facebook and YouTube to share our episode and use hashtag sa atin ng election. So kung meron po kayong mga questions na gusto nyong masagot ng ating mga guests, paki-type po sa ating comment section. Ayan. So nandito na. Sana madami magtanong, no? Hopefully, para mas maging malinaw sa kanila kung ano tong usapang pera at eleksyon. So, Josh, ako na ba yung magtatanong ulit? Sige. Ako po question ko po kay Attorney Vin naman. Kasi po kanina nakadalwa na ako kay Attorney Aiza. So, usapan pong contributions to, Attorney Vin. So, saan po ba, paano po ba nire-report ng mga kandidato yung mga contribution na natatanggap nila pagdating sa kanilang pangangampanya? And meron din po bang pinagbabawal na mga donasyon or contribution na hindi nila pwedeng tanggapin?
Okay. yung pagpapasa ng kanilang, paano nila nire-report sa pamamagitan ng ating SOSE na tinatawag o yung Statement of Campaign Expenditures nila. So, pinapasa nila yun sa COMELEC at saka dun sa mga field offices na may jurisdiction sa kanila. So as to the question kung meron bang mga pinagbabawal, katulad ng ating information video kanina, yes, may mga funds na, may mga donors na prohibited sa sa pagbibigay. I think napakita yung kanina doon sa ating informative video, yung mga bawal panggalingan na source, bawal mag-donate na source. So, if I remember na mention kanina yung mga merong public utilities, yung may mga educational institution na may grants. So, yun, hindi sila pwedeng donate. Pero I believe merong specific provision naman ang batas for that.
Yes po, Attorney Vin. So, Attorney Vin, kapag po ba donation, contribution, particular to na tinatanggap ng political party or ng candidate, may limit din po ba yon tulad ng kanilang paggastos?
Alam mo, that is a very interesting question eh. Kasi sa ibang mga bansa, hindi lang may limit ang paggastos, may limit din pati ang pagbibigay ng contribution. Interestingly, sa atin sa Pilipinas, hindi nalilimitahan yung pag-donate or yung pagko-contribute. Ang nalilimitahan lamang ay yung paggastos. So kanina doon sa information video natin, nakita nyo, may mga politiko na sabi nga doon sa nauna, mas marami pa silang naging pera pagkatapos ng eleksyon dahil nga hindi nila pwedeng gastusin dahil may limit. So I think si Attorney Aiza, may mga interesting insights siya regarding this. Also, it would be interesting kung mapag-aaralan ng Congress yung pagkakaroon ng limit sa pagdodonate. Ang pinaka latest na development natin dyan would be the limitation provided by the revised corporation code, which allows corporation to make reasonable contributions for partisan political activity. So, yun yung eto lang siguro yung meron tayong closest pa sa paglilimit sa mga ibibigay na reasonable contribution. But tingnan natin kung paano magde-develop ang laws. Tingnan natin kung magkakaroon ba ng limit sa donasyon or sa contribution. Katulad ng pagkakaroon ng limit sa paggastos sa expenditure. We leave that discretion to the Congress. Sila yung mas nakakaalam.
Ang bigat po nun. Josh, ang bigat nun, no? Parang walang limit yung contribution na pwedeng tanggapin ng isang political party or ng candidate. Tapos yung innovation niya po na nasabi niyo, Attorney Vin, na pwede na mag-donate ang corporations but reasonable lang. So previously, bawal po ang domestic and foreign corporations na mag-donate. Ngayon po yung domestic corporations na natin, pwede nang magkaroon ng reasonable corporate donations. Ano kaya, Josh, yung reasonable?
Ngayon, ako curious din ako kung ano ba yung definition ng reasonable. Meron na ba talagang definition yung reasonable?
Kalalabas lang kasi kalalabas lang nung ating revised corporation code that currently nasa proseso pa tayo ng pag-aaral para ma-define natin yan at magkaroon tayo ng sound policy kung ano ba ang tinatawag na reasonable corporate donation. But COMELEC is of course inaaral natin yan, tinitingnan natin yan, and ayan yung batas, susundin natin yan.
Okay po. Bale, actually, in line with that, no? Kasi ako curious din ako. Aside from hinintay pa natin yung definition ng reasonable, no? Looking from a citizen's perspective, parang these are the information that I want to know na magkano nga ba nare-receive nitong kandidato na to, ginagamit niya ba yung eleksyon para kumita? Kasi apparently, pwede kang tanggap ng contributions pero hindi ka required na gastusin, no? So in matters of accountability and transparency po, siguro I can give this question to Attorney Aiza kasi kanina si Attorney Ben parati tinatanong ko. Do you consider po na pwedeng i-release yung SOSE during the election period instead of after?
Okay. So, prior to yung current law kasi natin yun, it only requires candidates and political party treasurers to file their SOSE with COMELEC 30 days after the election. So, tapos na yung election, that's when they file it, and then kapag may nag-request sa CFO, that's when we see yung SOSE niya. So, one good legal reform, aside from dun sa sinabi ni Atty. Vin kanina na magkaroon ng contribution limit in the Philippines, is yung release ng SOSE prior to election day with publication requirements. Bakit natin siya gusto? Like you said, in matters of transparency. Kasi the best scenario that we can have is for voters to know kung saan nanggagaling yung pera ng kandidato and political parties prior to election day para mapa-factor in nila yan sa pagboto nila on election day. Kasi for example, this particular candidate received a large sum of money from contributors, for example, siguro a pharmaceutical business. So this would, di ba kanina din sa information video, we talked about yung mga possible leanings ng candidates natin when they get elected. So kung may ganyan, baka possible na may mga measures na ipasa in favor of donors so that our voters will know na posible to mangyari. It's up to them whether they want to vote for this candidate or hindi. Pero it's really important for voters to know. So magandang legal reform prior to election day.
Agree po, I totally agree. And ako kasi personally, I really believe na ang mga botante sa Pilipinas ay hindi bobotante. And we saw that during the 2016 elections, no? When COMELEC really worked hard for having the debates, no? Having really pushing for public information when it comes to electing their candidates. And nakita naman natin na yung mga predicted na trends ay nagbago every after nagkakaroon ng debate. So I think really itong mga impormasyon na to ay makatutulong talaga para sa mga botante natin. Yung isang question ko lang po, follow-up ko lang po, Atty. Aiza, is dahil legal reform po yan, no, yung kailangan mangyari. At this point, habang wala pa yung legal reform, at ano po ba yung pwede naming tingnan ng mga information para makita namin itong siguro historical data sa mga kandidato?
So as of now kasi, what we have is prior to election day, makakakita kayo ng mga newspaper articles and mga reports of, like for example, iside ko lang yung PCIJ. They monitor yung mga campaign spending ng ating mga kandidato prior to election day. So kahit na hindi pa siya final and running siya, medyo nakikita na natin how much the candidates are spending bago ang election. So yun, with that, although limited yung information, like total amount lang, hindi natin nakikita kung saan particularly, kung ano yung breakdown niya, meron na tayong general idea ng last speech ng kandidato.
Maraming salamat po for that information, Atty. Aiza. O ikaw, Briza, baka meron kang tanong ulit?
Oo, ulit. Kay Atty. Vin ulit. So, babalikan ko ulit si Atty. Vin doon sa contribution. Atty. Vin, pera lang po ba yung pwede i-donate sa mga political parties and
Actually,
candidates?
kahit in kind. And we factor that in. Yung amount ng in kind na natatanggap.
So, kailangan po state yung amount nung in kind, nung gift, nung donation, or ng
Yes.
deposit, advance, yung mga ganyan po, no? So, kailangan state yung value. So, Atty. Vin, pagdating po dun sa mga prohibited sources po ng contribution, paano po kaya ito na-identify ng Campaign Finance Office? Meron na po ba kayong mga examples or instances na na-experience kapag nag-audit po kayo ng SOSE ng mga kandidato?
So, again, ang legal basis kasi for the for the prohibition is Section 95 of the Omnibus Election Code. Doon doon nagkaroon ng prohibition sa kung sino-sino lang yung kung sino yung mga hindi pwedeng magbigay. So, Section 95 provides that no contribution for purposes of partisan political activity shall be made directly or indirectly by the following. So, yung sinabi kanina, yung public and private financial institutions, natural and juridical persons operating public utility, natural and juridical persons na may contract or subcontracts to supply the government or any of its subdivision, natural and juridical persons din na may granted na franchises, yung mga educational institution natin na yung mga institution natin na educational institution natin na naka-receive ng grant of public fund, yung mga may 1 year from the date of the election have been granted loans, so bawal. Yung mga foreign corporations and foreigners, bawal. Officials and employees of civil service, armed forces, bawal. So, paano namin malalaman kung kung may contribution sila? So, number one, through the voluntary information from the candidate electoral parties. Dahil nasa SOSE naman yan, makikita namin. So, paano yan kung hindi nila i-declare? So, hindi namin malalaman. So, syempre, there are also other sources like reports from the media, katulad ng binanggit ni Attorney Aiza kanina, and from the public. So, kapag tiningnan kasi din namin yung SOSE, alam nyo, nandun din kasi yung list ng kanilang political benefactors o kung sino-sino yung sumuport sa campaign nila. So the CFO can look into these benefactors, whether prohibited sila under the law or not. And again, isa pa, yung mga media contractors, pwede naming dahil required sila to submit their advertising contracts, we can also look into that. So kaya kanina nga sabi ko, we are encouraging the public kung merong nakikita, kasi nga the CFO can conduct preliminary inquiry based on information from the public as well. So dapat ganun dun ako mas dun yung yung message ko na we should be vigilant in monitoring the campaign finances of our candidates.
Thank you po sa malinaw na sagot, Attorney Vino. The media and the public play a vital role po talaga pagdating dito sa monitoring ng campaign finance. So Josh, may tanong pa ba?
Actually, meron din akong very curious question and siguro follow through ko na lang din dun sa tanong ko kanina kay Attorney Aiza. No? So we were talking earlier about kung ano ba yung historical information or historical data nung campaign expenditures, no? So, in the 2016 and the 2019 elections po, were there any findings in relation to election campaign finance operations?
Okay. So dito, medyo mahaba yung sagot ko. Sundan nyo na lang ako. Sorry. I'll try to make this as fast as possible. Pero I really want to discuss 3 topics here. So, number 1, for the 2016 and 2019 national and local elections, based sa SOSE na sinabit ng mga political parties sa CFO. Sample ng mga political parties natin na are, of course, yung mga PDP Laban, Liberal Party, for our viewers' information. Yung mga political parties natin are not able to utilize the full amount of the expenditure limit. Anong ibig sabihin nito? There is not much financial support from political parties to candidates. So, ang implication nito is, sino ang mas gumagastos sa election? It would be the candidates. So, number 2, on the topic of pre-campaign expenditures, for the 2019 NLE, na-mention ko kanina, di ba, yung PCIJ, they come out with a report of running expenditures. Ang pre-campaign expenditures, ito yung bago pa yung campaign period from the time na nag-file sila ng certificate of candidacy nila around October to the time of the campaign period around February or March of the next year. Nag-i-incur na sila ng gastos. So, may nilabas na PCIJ report saying that the combined pre-campaign expenditures in television, radio, print, and outdoor advertisements of 18 senatorial candidates amounted to 2.4 billion pesos. hindi pa nagka-campaign period ha. Ganun na yung gastos nila. Pero this amount is not reported in the SOSE. Kasi yung binibilang lang sa SOSE na expenditure is yung from the time na nag-start ang campaign period. Okay? So, yung number 3 na topic na gusto ko i-discuss is yung, hindi lang to from the 2016 and 2019 elections, pero nangyayari siya kada election, which we call as the incumbent's advantage on the use of state resources. Anong ibig sabihin nito? Dahil yung mga incumbent official natin ay nasa posisyon, nag-i-implement sila ng government programs for our providing public services to the public or to the registered voters, minsan nagkakaroon tayo ng abuse of state resources. For example lang, one example of this is yung pictures ng ating mga incumbent officials sa mga tarpaulins or of stating yung government projects. So, why do I mention yung pre-campaign expenditures and yung incumbent advantage? I think this one is to let people know or our viewers know na nasa kamay din nila kasi kung nakikita ninyo na merong mga ganitong reports na lumalabas, it shows yung behavior ng mga kandidato natin. Sa information video kanina na mention na yung campaign finance is also about good governance, di ba? So, nagbabiolate na ba or sumusobra na ba ang gastos yung mga kandidato natin? Dapat tinitingnan din natin tong behavior ng mga kandidato na natin because that's most likely the behavior that they will be doing after the election. So, I think since alam naman ng mga viewers natin na medyo mabagal ang legal system in the Philippines, the faster remedy is for us to check kung i-vote ba natin yung mga kandidato with this type of behavior or we say no to them para after the election, we can say na ayaw namin sa ganitong klaseng behavior. So yun, for our viewers, ito yung gusto kong message for tonight. It's in your hands, guys.
Okay po, maraming salamat po, Attorney Aiza. No? And just to summarize yung 3 points na na-mention niya kanina. So, parang yung first na findings nila ay walang masyadong nare-receive na suporta galing sa political parties. And then second na point niya ay marami na i-incur na gastos, no? Even pre-campaign. And then the third point na na-mention ni Attorney Aiza ay yung mga incumbent na meron silang advantage on the use of state resources. So I'm parang very interesting nga po yung insight na yun, no? Na syempre, kahit naman, di ba, kahit naman sa atin na hindi naman tayo kandidato, gagastos tayo yung kakayanin lang natin or medyo, kumbaga, may rational na paggastos, no? And if they're spending this much and considering that they're not spending from the funds of the political party, medyo kailangan din natin mag-isip, no, na anong mangyayari after the election kung ganito lang yung pamumuhunan nila doon sa kampanya nila. Ako po, may isang curious question lang ako in line with that. Pero flip side naman siya. Kasi I'm working po with Lenta's program on on pushing young leaders to run for elections. And the young leaders are people who don't have their personal finances to run. No? And linking to Attorney Vince's message earlier, no, na parang we want to democratize or make equitable yung pagkakandidato ng mga Pilipino, no? Are there ways para hindi private money yung gagamitin ng kandidato kung gusto niya lang talaga magsilbi para sa bayan? Baka po, Attorney Aiza, yeah?
Okay. So, kasi yung flip side din ng digital campaigning is that it's cheaper than television advertisements. Actually, they say na these days, well, syempre, we will not factor in yung mga like trolls and fake accounts, diba? Like, you can campaign and send out your message naman through social media these days. It's cheaper than television advertisements. But of course, yun, kung wala kang political party, ang na-offer naman ng political party natin is yung machinery nila on the ground. So, kung may political party naman kayo, of course, utilize yung machinery ng political party nyo para ma-inform ninyo yung mga voters as to kung ano yung gusto ninyong gawin para sa ating bansa.
Thank you, Attorney Aiza.
Okay po, maraming salamat, Attorney Aiza, no? And I think this will be the last question, no, for this segment. Tama, Briza, no?
Oo, Josh, tayo na. Inaasar lang kita doon. Yung youth-led program natin. So, tayo na. So, maganda paghandaan din talaga po yung yung pagtakbo ng mga youngsters natin, lalo na yung sa pagdating sa barangay and SK elections next year. So, bago po tayo mag-proceed dun sa last question para sa ating mga guests. So, meron tayong pop quiz. Ito po yung pakulo na baka tinatanong po ni Attorney Vin at ni Attorney Aiza na kung sila lang yung tatanungin natin. So, ngayon pong episode na to, hindi lang po guest ang tatanungin natin. So, tatanungin din po natin yung mga avid viewers natin ngayong gabi. Syempre, ang makakasagot ng tanong ngayong gabi ay mananalo ng tumataginting na 100 pesos worth of GCash. So, pang-load nyo rin yan. O yan, nandiyan na yung background music natin. Yes, yan. So, yung mga kanina pa nag-aabang o nanonood ng podcast episode natin ngayong gabi. So, Josh, ano ba yung tanong natin para sa kanila?
Well, before that, yung tanong ko ay, pwede ba ako sumali? Sayang din yan eh. 100 pesos din.
Nako, Josh. Kasama tayo dun sa prohibited persons na sumagot. Hindi tayo pwede sumagot.
So para din yun no? Para sa campaign finance merong mga limitations din, no. So going back to our to our pop quiz. So Briza, ang question natin para sa kanila ay patungkol pa rin sa eleksyon. So napakadali lang naman ito. Hopefully napakadali lang ito. At ready na ba kayo mga participants? Ready na ba kayo mga viewers? Kasi ako ready na ako. So dahil dyan, drum roll please. Drum roll. Okay, ang tanong ay, okay, kailan ang eksaktong araw ng susunod nating eleksyon? Within month, with month, day, and year, no? So, dapat kumpleto yung answers. Again, kailan ang eksaktong araw ng susunod nating eleksyon? Dapat complete answer.
So, wag na magpatumpik-tumpik pa. Mag-type na. Ganern! Oh, ayan. Ako may sumagot na eh.
Bilis ah. Sa kala ng 100 piso galing sa GCash.
Ayan. So, si Miss Irish A. Castillo. So, yung kauna-unang sumagot. Tama ba ako? Jenica Kisha Rich, si Irish Castillo, yung yan. O yan, hindi ko sinabi yung tamang sagot. So, ang tamang sagot ay May 9, 2022. So, si Irish Castillo, yung nakakuha, yung pinakabilis nakakuha ng tamang sagot. Palakpakan naman dyan. Bakit naman 100 lang? Ilabas ng 5,000 pesos. Dapat may jacket din.
Congratulations dun sa nanalo ng ating tumataginting na 100 piso galing sa GCash. Pero actually may isang curious question din ako. Bilang dami kong curious questions kanina, no? So alam naman natin, no, wag na nating i-sugarcoat. Alam naman natin na parang prevalent na problema pagdating sa eleksyon, yung vote buying. So kung para sa atin, nadalian tayo, no, na parang ilang segundo lang, meron na kagad nanalo at mamaya ita-transfer na yung pera sa GCash, magiging problema kaya yun ngayong eleksyon? Magiging, kumbaga ma-digitalize din yung vote buying? Magiging problema kaya siya?
Ako, Josh, tingin ko, alam mo.
Ayan, go, Atty. Vin.
Oh, alam mo, Josh, ako sa tingin ko, it may be used as a mode. Totoo naman, hindi naman natin nade-deny yan. But, it can also leave a paper trail. Kung saan yung mga violators natin will be traced. So, admittedly may pwede naman talaga posible naman. Kaya lang hindi ibig sabihin hindi rin natin mamomonitor. Kasi yun yung flip side ng pagkakaroon ng electronic bill. So, as you can remember in the May 2019 election, nagkaroon ng COMELEC ng task force kontra bigay. It was an interagency task force against vote buying. So, palagi yung same ang message natin mula nung task force kontra bigay dito sa ating podcast, pagdating sa campaign finance, political fundings, same ang message natin. We are encouraging the public to always be vigilant and to report to the authorities any vote buying or election violation, and sa part namin, campaign finance violation, or even vote selling activities.
Ayun, maraming salamat po sa insight, no, Attorney Vin. And it's reassuring na kahit nagbabago rin yung forma ng vote buying, sana hindi, pero posible, meron ding paraan para ma-regulate pa rin natin siya. And I hope in parallel with the COMELEC's efforts, no, to monitor and to penalize siguro yung vote buying, no, the civil society and media can also do their part in monitoring these activities.
So Josh, yun totoo yan, no. Yun yung palaging panawagan niya ng lente. Time to time every elections, tinuturuan natin yung public na mag-document, lalo na yung mga election offense sa ganyan. Kasi two-way naman lagi, vote selling, vote buying. Kaya lang ngayon talaga, no, kung ganoon kabilis natin pwede ma-transfer yung premyo ni Irish Castillo. Actually, yung doon sa vote buying, vote selling, pwede mo na nga simulan ngayon unti-unti. So, halimbawa, magta-transfer ka ng ganitong malaking pera, pwede mo na umpisahan ngayon. Ang hirap lang, but sobrang challenge lang sa lahat ng election stakeholders, lalo na sa COMELEC. So, yun. So, Josh, bago natin pakawalan hindi pa pala, may comments and questions pa. Pero bago tayo mag-proceed sa comments and questions portion, meron po kasing mga tanong sa Facebook natin. So, meron lang konting pakulo. Marami po kasi ngayong interns ang lente. So, merong konting information number coming from our Lanterns or Legal Network for Truthful Elections intern. So, Lanterns, take it away.
And now here's the complete list of allowable campaign expenses as stated by RA 7166. For President, we have 10 pesos. For Vice President, 10 pesos. For Senators, we have 3 pesos. For other candidates like district representatives, governor, vice governor, board members, mayor, vice mayor, and councilor, 3 pesos. For national candidates of political parties, 5 pesos. And for local candidates of political parties, sorry.
Kung ikay nanalo, hindi ka makakakupo hanggang di mo sinusumite ang sosi mo. Ganon din sa mga kandidato nanalo sa mga political parties. Sa unang paglabag, may tinakdang administrative fine ang COMELEC. Ngunit hindi ito mag-a-apply sa elective barangay office. Para sa ikalawa at sa mga susunod na paglabag, mas mataas na administrative fine na nasa diskresyon ng commission. Hindi lang yon, ang lumabag ay walang hanggang madidiskwalipika na maupo sa pampublikong opisina.
O diba, gumastos ka na, naperwisyo ka pa. Kaya kung ako sa'yo, magsabit ka na lang ng tamang sosyo mo. Kaya para sa mga butante, pag ang kandidato ay may TV commercial na mas marami pa sa episodes ng Ang Probinsyano o kung di kaya ang buong cast ng nangangampanya para sa kanya, kabahan ka na. Dahil sabi nga nila, ang negosyanteng malaki ang kapital, malaki rin ang hinahabol ng kita.
Yan. So, thank you naman lahat ng mga interviews. Anong masasabi niyo?
Ako masasabi ko lang parang very informative din yung TikTok na performance ng ating mga interns, and I think it also signals to us, no, na nagbabago rin talaga yung forma ngayon ng election, and at the same time nagbabago rin yung forma ng voters education. Kung dati parang dumadaan tayo sa parang mag-room to room siguro or parang pupunta sa barangay, no, ngayon marami na talaga pagbabago sa social media, meron ng hindi lang Facebook, hindi lang YouTube, pero kahit TikTok, pwede nang maging paraan para i-educate natin ang mga voters natin. So sana mas marami pang mga tulad ng mga interns natin na nagtutulak ng education para sa atin in preparation for the 2022 elections.
Totoo yan, Josh, no? Sana matuto din tayo mag-TikTok bago tayo lumabas ng mabot. Pero salamat sa mga interns natin. Ang galing mag-TikTok eh. Tuwan-tuwa ako nung pinapanood ko. But ito na, Josh. As promised sa ating mga guests for tonight's episode, si Attorney Vina and Attorney Aiza, meron tayong mga comments coming from our Facebook avid viewers. So, meron din mga shout-out dito. So, ayan. Merong shout out from Jericho JC. Shout out sa mga millennials at Gen Z. Paano ba to iniimik, Josh? Shout out!
Shout out sa mga millennials at Gen Z.
So, ayan. So, simulan na natin yung ating comments and questions, no? Meron po ditong tanong, Attorney Aiza and Attorney Vin, from Abigail Paquinto. So, how can we make sure that all the amounts spent by the candidate is in the SOSE? What if they purposely omitted some amounts? How can we find out? So, parang medyo nahagip din kanina ni Attorney Vin. But, Attorney Vin?
Again, katulad ng sinabi ko kanina, paano natin matitrace kung hindi sila, nag-omit sila, at the same time, hindi lang nag-omit. Kung baka may mga sources din sila nakasama dun sa ating mga prohibited na panggalingan nung funds. So, na-enumerate ko kanina yung mga ways on how we can identify that. So again, it's the voluntary information from the candidate SOSE, yung kanilang list of benefactors, we can go into that. Also, we can look at the media contractors na magpapasa ng kanilang mga contracts, advertising contracts to us. We can cross-check that. So, sa CFO, we can also conduct preliminary inquiry based on the information from the public. So, ikaw, Ms. Abigail Paquinto, could also report kung meron kang nakita na mga campaign finance violation. So, pwede rin kayo mag-request ng sa amin ng mga SOSE, tapos pwede nyo makita, ma-compare kung halimbawa wala naman ito doon sa dineklara. May ganitong paraan ng pangangampanya pero wala doon sa dineklara ng SOSE, you can actually report that to us. So doon na pumapasok again yung ating public empowerment natin sa public para matulungan ng CFO na mag-conduct ng mga preliminary inquiry.
Ayan. Thank you, Attorney Vin. So, sana ay binasagot ni Attorney Vin yung question mo. So, yung next question, ito, Josh. Yeah.
Okay. Sige, so yung next question naman po galing kay Nicole Saya. For transparency, some are suggesting that SOSE will be released during the election period instead of the recommended 30-day period. What are the possible disadvantages if candidates submit their SOSE during the election period? So siguro kay Ma'am Ma'am Aiza, no?
Yes,
Attorney Aiza.
What are the possible disadvantages? To the public and to the voters, I don't think na there's a disadvantage as long as they know na partial pa lang yung spending na yan. Kasi we have to wait for the election day to really finalize kung ano yung mga gastos ng candidate. But just to inform lang din si Nicole, based on our interview sa political parties and yung mga candidates nila, of course, may operational requirement on their side. So, syempre, nangangampanya sila during the election period. So, at the same time, they would need to do yung SOSE kasi para siyang balance sheet din in a way. So, dapat mag-tally yung contributions and expenditure ninyo. So anyway, more of yung impact ng pag-release niya earlier is on the political parties and candidates. Just pag gusto natin ito mangyari, ang suggestion ng Lente is for COMELEC to help make it easier for our candidates and political parties. Like for example, pwede tayo mag-develop ng platform para i-fill out na lang nila, mas mabilis para sa kanila to report. Pero as to the public and the voters, gusto natin na prior to election.
Okay, Maraming salamat po, Attorney Aiza, for answering the question of Nicole Sayat. No? Sana nasagot din. So, Briza, next question.
Yes, Josh. Ito, may tanong from John Pauline de la Paz. So, if there is a chance that we can amend RA 7166 provision on the amounts that a candidate can use during campaign, what do you think are the proper amounts considering the present monetary rates? Ang hirap ng tanong po ni John Pauline. But baka mayroong suggestion or si Attorney Aiza and si Attorney Vin, and anyone po can answer para po kay sa question ni John Pauline de la Paz.
I think I'll give way muna kay Attorney Aiza kasi ako coming from a point of view of regulator eh. Medyo kami, we are on, we will tend to abide by the, voice of the Congress eh. Kasi sila naman yung, sila yung tawag nito, siset.
Yes po. Thank you po, Attorney Vin. Go po, Attorney Aiza.
Okay, so yung current suggestion kasi is 50 pesos yata. Anyway, that's the pending bill. Pero kasi yung, we actually sa Lente, we studied this na. Pero kasi yung study ng Lente is dependent on strengthening our political parties as well. Meaning na, sige, pwede natin i-increase yung expenditure limit per candidates. Pero gusto natin ma-strengthen din yung political parties and mabigyan din sila ng funding. So with the funding with political parties, matutulungan nila yung mga kandidato natin financially. So yung recommendation ng COMELEC is for national candidates instead of 50 pesos yung na-mention ko kanina. Ang recommendation natin is around 15 to 30 pesos. Pero yung current kasi natin now is 10 pesos. So ang tingin natin with the basta ma-improve yung financial capacity ng political parties natin to help out our candidates. 15 to 30 pesos would be realistic for our candidates to be able to wage a national campaign.
Thank you, Attorney Aiza.
Sorry. For our local candidates, pwede na siguro yung around mga 10 pesos from the current 3 pesos.
So kung nakuha nyo kanina yung pa-TikTok nung interns, tapos i-connect nyo siya doon sa sagot ni Attorney Aiza, no? Yun yung mga di ba, yung current amounts na pwedeng, yung limit. Tapos yung tanong yung sagot ni Attorney Aiza na proposal, ano yung, reasonable amount na pwedeng i-propose para itaas naman ng konti yung mga, mga current amount na meron tayo. So Josh, ito siguro last question. I think patungkol dun sa intervention number ng mga interns. So ito, personal view siguro ng ating mga guests.
Okay, so babasahin ko lang yung question, no? So galing kay Princess Joy de la Cruz Alcantara, do you believe that vote buying via GCash and PayMaya will occur most likely on the 2022 national and local elections? Any of you po can answer.
Ako naman.
Yes po, Attorney Aiza, you can start po.
Sige, so for GCash, yung na-answer na siya ni Attorney Vin din kanina, I think it's a possibility kasi very convenient siya. Pero, like she said, since hindi to talagang cash and meron siyang, dumadaan siya, right? It's like a bank. So may transfer siya. So just in case for our voters, you receive this kind of amount and you want to report yung vote buying sa inyo, i-attach ninyo yung proof of transfer, and then narrate kung paano binili yung boto ninyo. That would be evidence against them. Nasa-strengthen yung case ninyo for vote buying.
So, isang screenshot lang yan, isang ganun. May proof of transfer. Diba?
May resibo.
Alright. So sana nasagot ng ating mga guests And I believe nasagot talaga ng ating mga guests yung mga questions coming from our avid viewers sa Facebook. So bago natin pakawalan si Attorney Aizan, Attorney Vin, ako ito, surprise question to sa kanila. Josh, ano ba yung gusto natin gawin?
Okay, so bilang po showbiz yung theme natin ngayon, no? So magtatapos po tayo sa fast talk. Ayan, so simula muna po tayo kay Attorney Vin. So social media o face-to-face? Bawal ko mag-explain ha, social media o face-to-face?
Face-to-face.
So, ako na ba, Josh? So, para naman kay Attorney Aiza, empowered voter or educated voter? Ang hirap naman ng tanong.
Ano? Empowered voter.
Empowered voter daw. Josh?
Okay. So ako naman, sorry, naputol sa akin, no? Pero may question pa ako kay Attorney Aiza. Kung ulam ang politiko, ano sila?
Wait, baka hindi maganda yung
Bawal mo mag-explain, ha? Bawal mag-explain.
pork something.
Ito naman po, Attorney Vin, para po sa inyo. Para sa inyo po, ano ang hugis ng politika?
Bilog. Bilog na bilog.
So Josh, ito at last question para kay Attorney Vin at Attorney Aiza, pareho silang sasagot. So Attorney Aiza, Attorney Vin, mabokang kandidato o tahimik na kandidato?
Mabokang kandidato na lang tayo.
Attorney Aiza, kayo po?
Tumahimik si Aiza eh. Baka yung kabila.
Tahimik na kandidato kay Attorney Aiza.
Honest na kandidato.
Ayan, galing. Although hindi siya pasok sa ating rules, no? dito sa fast talk, pero agree. Honest na kandidato talaga. Ako naman, meron din akong fast talk question para sa inyo pareho. So isang tanong, isang sagot. Magkano ang halaga ng boto mo? Attorney Aiza?
Priceless.
Yes. Kayo po, Attorney Vin?
Infinite.
Wow.
Priceless and infinite. Ang galing na ating mga guests. Yan. At dyan po, nagtatapos ang ating interaction with our guests. Maraming salamat po, Attorney Aiza, Attorney Vin, sa pagiging game. Ay, wait! May nakalimutan ako! May isa pa daw. Sabi ni Josh. Ako hindi ko kaya. Josh, take it away.
May last question po kami at yung request po sa amin ay i-act out po namin si Chris Aquino nung in-interview na si Kim Chu. So, pakisagot po nitong tanong na to, both po sa inyo, Attorney Aiza and Attorney Vin, no? Nag-guest ako because... So, yan po.
Just ulitin mo daw. Minimik ko mga bata dito.
So, nag-guest ako because...
Because magandang malaman ng publiko na importante ang campaign finance at may participation sila dito, hindi lamang ang mga kandidato.
Yay.
Maraming salamat po, Attorney Vin and Attorney Aiza.
Because I want our viewers and our voters to know na nasa kamay talaga natin lahat. The fastest remedy, di ba, they always say na filean ng kaso, i-prosecute natin. Pero the fastest way and fastest remedy for us to make sure na maganda yung future natin is to elect the right or yung according to our conscience ng mga public officials.
Ayan. So thank you Attorney Aiza, Attorney Vin. Ito na po talaga yung thank you kanina. Maraming salamat po sa pag-guest at pagpayag nyo na maging bahagi nitong hashtag sa atin ng Election Podcast Episode 12, Fans, Ganern, Pera at Eleksyon. Maraming salamat po, Attorney Vina at Attorney Aiza sa time.
Maraming salamat, Lente.
Maraming salamat po.
Sa ating mga viewers. Maraming salamat.
Thank you.
Josh, gusto ko sagutin din natin yung sa atin naman, nag-host ako because Josh, ano sagot mo?
Grabe, na-hot seat ako dito
Paano sa'yo yun? Paano sa'yo yun?
Okay, so ako nag-host ako dito kasi naniniwala talaga ako na ang susi para magbago yung Pilipinas, no, is we elect good leaders and the right leaders. At magsisimula yun kung maayos natin ang election process, which is what COMELEC is doing and what the citizens and what other institutions are also doing. So kailangan talaga natin siyang pagtulong-tulungan. And yun, ito na yung tulong ko.
Thank you, Josh. Ako naman, sasagutin ko din yun. Nag-host ako because wala akong choice. Joke lang. Nag-host ako because I think huling podcast ko na to. It's very special tong last podcast episode na to. And ayan, patapos na tayo, Josh. Ayan, kino-call out na tayo. 9 minutes daw before 8:30. Ayan, outro proper na kami ni Josh. Huwag kayo mag-alala. Josh, kumusta naman sa'yo being the guest co-host for tonight? So, kumusta naman? Kumusta naman yung naging discussion natin ngayong gabi?
Sobrang marami ako natutunan and actually nag-take notes ako, no. May tatlo akong key points na nakuha. So una, kung gaano ka-importante yung information, no, lalo na yung information na makukuha natin dun sa SOSE. Ayun. So it's already a tool for us to see kung paano nga ba yung spending ng mga kandidato natin. Kung tama pa ba or medyo parang kaduda-duda na. Pangalawang point ay marami pa ring space for reforms even though COMELEC and in partnership with media and civil society, no, umayos na kahit paano yung mga election procedures natin, but there still are a lot of spaces for reforms like yung releasing ng SOSE during the elections, saka yung regulation ng contributions and a lot more, no, na napag-usapan natin kanina. And then lastly, marami na nagbago sa election, lalo na ngayon dahil digital na tayo. Simula ng 2016, it's already said to be a social media social media elections, and paunti na talagang nagiging digital yung forma ng election natin. So even though may challenges yun, tulad nung na-mention kanina nila Attorney Vin, no, may mga opportunities din to better regulate dahil may mga resibo na tayo. Ayun. So, Briza, ikaw naman, may mga insights ka ba?
Oo, Josh, dagsungan ko na rin yung mga sinabi mo, no? So, ngayong gabi, meron akong favorite letter. Hulaan mo, Josh, 26 na letter. Ano yung favorite letter ko ngayong gabi? So, baby, may lang ako dito.
Ako tingin ko, letter D for dinner.
Gutom na. Pero Josh, ang favorite letter ko ngayong gabi ay letter T. So, T for truthfulness and transparency. So, part ng call to action natin ngayon for tonight's episode. So, big challenge talaga for all election stakeholders to comprehensively understand kung paano yung flow ng pera into Philippine politics. Sabi nga nila, when politics comes in, so pumapasok, money talks, 'di ba? So diyan pumapasok yung campaign finance talaga. It relates to good governance. Yung finance, it affects the as an important component ng democratic process. So diyan pumapasok din yung role ng lahat ng election stakeholders, hindi lang ng political parties ng candidates, but also tayong mga citizens. Tulad nga ng mga nasabi ni Attorney Vin and Attorney Aiza na meron din tayong role dito sa election. So, yan, Josh.
Ayan. So, actually, malapit na tayo magtapos, no, dito sa ating podcast. Yes, malapit na matapos. So, actually, meron pa namang mga susunod na podcast ng Lente, di ba? Tama, Briza?
Oo, Josh. So, para makita natin kung ano ba yung next topic ng podcast natin, take it away, Rich. Yan. So, meron tayong open call. So, ito yung part mo, mga avid viewers, na kayo naman yung mag-suggest kung ano yung gusto nyong topic for our next podcast. So, open po itong poll na to for a week. So, wag po kayong mahiya mag-PM, mag-email sa Lente. Nakikita nyo po sa ating crawl yung details ng Lente kung paano nyo po makakontakt kami kung meron po kayong suggestion para sa ating next na podcast.
Oo, saka actually we can take this opportunity kasi yung electoral team ng Lente sobrang sipag talaga niyan when it comes to researching, no? So sa mga botante natin, syempre na gustong mas maging educated voters, this is your chance para pagtrabahuan ng Lente electoral team yung mga topics na gusto nyong matutunan pa. And with that, siguro dito na tayo magtatapos, no? Gusto namin sanang pasalamatan lahat ng naging involved dito sa podcast na ito. So we would like to show appreciation to our guests, to our viewers, lalong-lalo na sa ating mga speakers na sina Attorney Aiza at saka si Attorney Vin. Ikaw, Briza, meron ka bang iba pang gustong pasalamatan?
Of course, unang-una pagpapasalamat ako sa ating mga FSL interpreters ngayong gabi, kay Miss Joy, kay Sir Jay sa walang sawa na pagpayag every time may podcast ang Lente. And of course, sa Secretariat, kay Jenica, kay Kisha, kay Rich na buong naghirap para dito sa production na ito. And of course, sa mga interns. And pa-shoutout naman, shoutout ko na rin yung youth-led team na kanina pa naghihintay. Gutom na ata sa dinner. So, shoutout kay Jamir, Jericho, JM, Paeng, and si Boss na nandun sa labas. Alam ko, gutom na tong mga to. Hinihintay tayo, Joshua. So, maraming salamat po ulit sa lahat. Bye!
Ayan. Maraming salamat po at maraming salamat din kay Ate Pochay po, no?
Wait,
Okay.
last na, Josh, maraming salamat sa pagpayag na maging co-host tonight. Sobrang challenging yung topic ito. And napakaganda ng input and yun lang po ang ating podcast ngayon. Maraming salamat, Josh.
At maraming salamat din sa pag-invite niyo sa akin dito as your guest host. At doon na po nagtatapos ang ating podcast. Abangan po natin ang susunod na podcast ng Lente Electoral Team.